Welcome. Tonight we'll gently explore how the human mind behaves when the world becomes quiet. The human mind rarely becomes completely quiet at night. Even when the body is still, mental activity often continues. During the day, attention is directed outward. Sounds, movement, and conversation give the mind structure. There is always something responding or adjusting. As night arrives, that structure slowly fades. External signals become weaker. The environment asks for less. In this quieter state, the mind naturally turns inward. This inward movement is not a problem. It is not a sign of restlessness. It is a normal psychological response to reduced stimulation. Thoughts that had no space during the day begin to surface. Memories that were postponed return gently. Emotions that were set aside move closer to awareness. The mind uses stillness as an opportunity to organize. It revisits experiences that were left unfinished. It moves through impressions that were never fully processed. This is why nighttime thinking feels different from daytime thought. It becomes slower, more reflective, less focused on action. Rather than planning or reacting, the mind begins sorting. Connections loosen, details soften. Meaning becomes less rigid. In this state, thoughts may appear without direction. They drift from one idea to another. They follow association rather than logic. This wandering quality is often misunderstood. It is not the mind losing control. It is the mind releasing urgency. Urgency depends on pressure. At night, pressure gradually fades. As pressure fades, awareness expands. The mind no longer needs to hold everything tightly. Thoughts are allowed to pass with less resistance. Some thoughts repeat during this time, not because they are important, but because they were unresolved. Repetition is the mind's way of seeking completion. It is not meant to disturb. When the environment is quiet, repetition becomes more noticeable. There are fewer distractions to interrupt it. This does not mean the mind is refusing to rest. It means the mind is transitioning. Rest does not arrive suddenly. It unfolds gradually. The mind loosens before it quiets. It wanders before it settles. Listening without reacting supports this process. Awareness remains present. Effort begins to fade. Over time, the rhythm of thought slows naturally, not through force, but through understanding. The mind does not rest because it is commanded to. It rests when it no longer feels the need to stay alert. And this shift often begins in silence. As the mind turns inward, its pace begins to change. Thoughts no longer compete for attention. They arrive one at a time. Some feel familiar. Others feel vague and incomplete. The mind does not bring these thoughts forward randomly. It selects what was left unresolved. Unfinished experiences carry more psychological weight. They remain active beneath awareness. Nighttime quiet allows them to surface gently. This is part of mental regulation. The mind seeks balance rather than answers. It revisits moments without demanding action. Memories appear without urgency. They are observed rather than relived. Emotion becomes softer during this process. Intensity reduces as reflection replaces reaction. This shift helps the nervous system slow down. The mind moves away from survival mode. Alertness begins to dissolve. Thinking becomes less linear. Ideas connect loosely rather than logically. This is why nighttime thoughts can feel symbolic. Images replace words. Impressions replace conclusions. The mind is no longer organizing for action. It is organizing for rest. During this phase, attention becomes flexible. It drifts without resistance. There is less effort to maintain control. This effortlessness supports mental recovery. The brain is preparing for reduced awareness. It is not shutting down. It is recalibrating. Repetition may still occur, but repetition now feels quieter, less demanding, more distant. This change signals a deeper transition. The mind is no longer trying to solve. It is allowing experience to settle. Settling does not require focus. It happens naturally when pressure is removed. The quieter the environment becomes, the easier this process unfolds. Silence provides space rather than emptiness. Within that space, mental activity softens. The need to think fades gradually, not because thoughts disappear, but because attention releases them. This release marks the approach of rest. The mind does not resist this shift. It follows it instinctively. As mental activity continues to soften, awareness begins to drift. Thoughts feel farther away. Their edges become less defined. Attention no longer settles firmly on any one idea. It floats between impressions. This floating state is a natural threshold. It sits between wakefulness and rest. Time feels less structured here. Moments blend together. The mind no longer tracks sequence. Language loses precision. Words become sounds. Meaning becomes atmosphere. This shift reduces cognitive effort. Understanding is no longer required. Awareness remains without direction. The body often responds next. Muscles release subtly. Breathing grows quieter. These changes occur without instruction. They reflect nervous system regulation. The body recognizes safety before the mind does. As physical tension fades, mental tension follows. Thoughts slow further. Some dissolve before completing themselves. Others never fully form. This incomplete quality is significant. It signals disengagement. The mind no longer insists on clarity. Clarity belongs to wakefulness. Rest welcomes ambiguity. In this state, attention does not need to stay present. It can fade as needed. Listening becomes passive. Awareness comes and goes. Nothing is required to maintain this experience. There is no correct depth. There is no expected outcome. Rest emerges gradually. It unfolds without markers. There is no clear beginning, only a soft continuation. The mind releases its final attachments slowly. Control loosens. Monitoring stops. Awareness thins. Sleep does not arrive suddenly. It seeps in quietly. The transition completes itself. Nothing further is needed. As rest approaches, the need for control continues to fade. The mind no longer checks its own activity. Thoughts are not evaluated. They are barely noticed. Awareness becomes less precise. Attention no longer holds firmly to content. It rests loosely, without direction. This looseness is not confusion. It is the absence of effort. Effort belongs to waking states. Rest requires very little. The mind begins to trust the process. It no longer anticipates what comes next. Expectation dissolves quietly. With expectation gone, tension follows. There is no need to prepare. No need to monitor progress. The mind releases its grip on sequence. Moments no longer feel ordered. They overlap softly. Time stretches, then thins. Awareness moves without boundaries. Thoughts may still appear briefly, but they lack urgency. They dissolve before forming conclusions. This incomplete quality is important. Completion is no longer required. The mind is stepping away from resolution. Resolution belongs to conscious attention. Rest does not need closure. In this state, perception becomes gentle. Sounds feel distant. Sensations fade into the background. The body grows quieter. Signals slow down. Muscles release in subtle stages. Breathing settles without effort. The nervous system shifts into maintenance. There is nothing to manage, nothing to adjust. The mind follows the body naturally. Thinking becomes fragmented. Images flicker without meaning. Language loses structure. Words are no longer held. They pass through without impact. This is not loss of awareness. It is redistribution. Awareness spreads thinly rather than focusing. This thinning allows rest to deepen. There is no clear boundary here, only gradual fading. The mind does not notice the moment it lets go. It simply does. Control dissolves without resistance. Attention drifts further away. Nothing pulls it back. Rest continues on its own. Awareness now begins to recede further. It no longer stays centered on experience. It moves to the edges. Thoughts appear faintly. They pass without forming shape. The mind is no longer narrating itself. There is less internal commentary, less labeling, less distinction between one moment and the next. This reduction is gradual. Nothing stops suddenly. Processes slow and simplify. The mind conserves energy by releasing complexity. Detail is no longer necessary. Precision fades naturally. Awareness does not disappear. It becomes diffuse, spread thin across experience. This diffusion feels quiet rather than empty. There is no sense of loss, only lightness. Mental boundaries soften. The separation between thought and silence blurs. Moments stretch without direction. Time feels less measurable. The mind no longer tracks duration. It no longer asks how long something has lasted. This absence of tracking reduces effort. Effortlessness supports rest. The body responds by slowing further. Signals between systems become minimal. Breathing remains steady without attention. Muscles stay relaxed without adjustment. The nervous system maintains this state quietly. There is no alertness here, only gentle regulation. Thought fragments may still arise. They dissolve before completing themselves. Images lose clarity. Meaning loses urgency. The mind does not attempt interpretation. Interpretation belongs to wakefulness. Here, experience is unstructured. Awareness floats without anchoring. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be remembered. The mind allows itself to thin further. Control no longer returns. Monitoring does not resume. The direction toward rest remains steady. No effort pulls awareness back. The process continues without interruption. Rest deepens quietly. At this stage, awareness becomes very light. It no longer settles anywhere for long. Attention drifts without intention. There is little distinction between one thought and the next. Mental activity feels distant, almost background. The mind no longer forms complete narratives. It releases the need to connect ideas. Thoughts appear as fragments. They dissolve before taking shape. This fragmentation is a sign of release. The mind is no longer organizing experience. It is disengaging from structure. Structure belongs to waking states. Here, structure fades. Awareness no longer seeks meaning. Meaning requires effort. Effort has already softened. The body remains still. Breathing is quiet and regular. Signals between mind and body are minimal. There is no urgency in the system, no scanning, no anticipation. The nervous system remains in a settled state. It maintains balance without direction. This balance feels neutral, neither alert nor asleep, just quiet. Moments pass without being counted. Time loses relevance. There is no sense of progression, only continuation. Awareness does not track itself. It does not observe drifting. It simply drifts. The sense of self becomes less defined. Boundaries soften further. There is less separation between experience and absence. This softness allows rest to complete itself. The mind does not notice the moment of letting go. It happens quietly, without confirmation, without signal. Listening may still occur, or it may already have faded. Both are natural. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be added. The process continues on its own. Rest deepens without awareness. The transition finishes silently. There is nothing more to attend to. Awareness now feels very distant. It no longer stays with the voice continuously. Moments of listening appear and disappear. There is no effort to remain present. Attention drifts freely. Sometimes it fades completely. This fading is not loss. It is release. The mind no longer distinguishes between sound and silence. Both are received in the same way. Neither requires response. Thoughts rarely form clearly now. They appear as faint impressions. They dissolve before becoming defined. There is no attempt to follow them. Following would require intention. Intention has softened. The sense of time continues to blur. Minutes feel indistinct. There is no internal clock running. The mind does not measure duration. It rests outside of sequence. Experience no longer unfolds in order. It spreads gently, like mist rather than motion. The body remains calm. Breathing stays quiet and automatic. Muscles hold no tension. Signals are minimal. The nervous system remains settled. There is no alertness returning, no checking, no scanning. The mind no longer waits for sleep. Waiting implies expectation. Expectation has already faded. Rest approaches without announcement. There is no threshold to cross, no moment to notice. Awareness thins further. It becomes barely noticeable. Listening may pause entirely, then return briefly, then fade again. These shifts happen without meaning. They require no interpretation. The mind does not attempt to understand them. Understanding is no longer needed. The remaining awareness feels neutral, unattached, quiet. There is no sense of direction now. Only stillness, only continuation. Nothing pulls attention back. Nothing interrupts the process. Rest continues naturally. The mind allows itself to disappear from focus, without resistance, without effort, without thought. The transition completes itself gently, silently, unnoticed. Awareness now carries very little detail. The mind no longer gathers information. It allows experience to pass without recording it. Thoughts appear as soft traces. They barely register. There is no impulse to examine them. Examination would require effort. Effort has already released. Mental activity continues at a minimal level. It no longer forms patterns. It does not connect ideas. Each impression stands alone, then fades. This fading is gentle. Nothing drops away abruptly. The mind simply stops holding. Holding is unnecessary now. Awareness rests without focus. It does not center itself anywhere. It spreads lightly across experience. This spread feels neutral, not heavy, not empty, just quiet. The sense of self softens further. Identity becomes less defined. There is no internal narrative running, no story to follow, no commentary to maintain. The mind does not ask questions. Questions belong to alertness. Alertness has already softened. The body remains calm. Breathing continues without awareness. Movement signals are minimal. The nervous system remains settled. Nothing signals a need to wake. Nothing signals a need to change. Time feels distant now. There is no sense of before or after, only a gentle present. This present does not demand attention. It exists quietly. Awareness may fade completely at times, then return briefly, then fade again. These shifts happen naturally. They require no response. The mind does not resist them. Resistance would require intention. Intention has dissolved. The remaining awareness feels thin, almost transparent. Sound blends with silence. Listening becomes optional. Nothing depends on it. The process continues without observation. Rest deepens steadily. The mind no longer participates. The transition moves forward on its own. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing needs to be added. Everything necessary has already softened. Awareness now feels extremely light. It no longer gathers around any single sensation. Attention drifts without direction or purpose. There is no attempt to stay present. Presence no longer needs effort. Thoughts appear rarely. When they do, they feel distant, almost incomplete. They dissolve before forming meaning. The mind does not follow them. Following would require intention. Intention has already softened. Mental activity becomes sparse. Long spaces appear between impressions. These spaces feel neutral. They are not empty. They are restful. The mind no longer interprets experience. Interpretation belongs to alertness. Alertness has faded. The sense of continuity weakens. Moments no longer connect. They exist briefly, then disappear. Time no longer feels linear. There is no awareness of sequence, only soft continuation. The body remains quiet. Breathing continues automatically. Muscles stay relaxed. There is no impulse to move. The nervous system maintains balance silently. No signals request attention. No adjustments are needed. The mind releases its final structures. Order dissolves. Expectation dissolves. Awareness thins further. It spreads until it becomes barely noticeable. Listening may pause completely, then return faintly, then fade again. These shifts occur without meaning. They do not need explanation. Nothing pulls attention back. Nothing interrupts the process. The mind does not check itself. It no longer monitors experience. Monitoring has ended. Rest continues uninterrupted. The process completes itself gradually. There is no moment to notice, only quiet continuation. Awareness now exists without focus. It does not rest on sound. It does not rest on thought. It simply remains lightly. The mind no longer gathers experience. It allows everything to pass unrecorded. Nothing needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be followed. Thoughts appear only as faint traces. They have no beginning. They have no end. They dissolve before becoming distinct. There is no attempt to hold them. Holding would require effort. Effort has already faded. Long pauses exist between impressions. These pauses feel gentle. They do not demand awareness. The sense of self softens further. There is less separation between experience and absence. Identity no longer forms clearly. There is no internal reference point. The mind does not ask where it is. Questions no longer arise. Questioning belongs to alertness. Alertness has dissolved. The body remains still and quiet. Breathing continues on its own. Signals between systems are minimal. Nothing calls for response. Nothing signals urgency. Time feels distant and irrelevant. Moments do not connect. They appear briefly, then fade. There is no awareness of passing. Only a quiet continuation. Listening may still occur at times. At other times it may disappear completely. Both are natural. Nothing depends on either state. Awareness no longer evaluates experience. Evaluation requires intention. Intention has softened beyond use. The remaining awareness feels neutral. It does not move toward anything. It does not pull away from anything. It simply thins further. The mind no longer participates. Rest continues without supervision. The process unfolds quietly. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing needs to change. The transition deepens on its own. Awareness now feels almost weightless. It does not settle anywhere for long. It brushes lightly against experience, then moves on without attachment. There is no effort to remain aware. Awareness no longer holds a position. It drifts freely. Thoughts rarely appear now. When they do, they feel distant. They do not form sentences. They appear as fragments, then fade before becoming clear. The mind does not follow them. Following would require intention. Intention is no longer present. There are extended spaces between impressions. These spaces feel calm. They do not feel empty. They feel complete on their own. The sense of continuity weakens further. Moments do not connect. They arise independently, then disappear. Time no longer has structure. There is no before or after, only a gentle now. This now does not ask for attention. It exists quietly. The body remains settled. Breathing stays slow and automatic. Muscles hold no tension. Signals remain minimal. The nervous system stays regulated. Nothing calls awareness back. Nothing signals danger or need. The mind releases its last points of reference. Orientation dissolves. Position dissolves. Awareness no longer knows where it is. Knowing would require effort. Effort has already softened completely. Listening may flicker briefly, then disappear again. These shifts occur without meaning. They require no response. The mind does not resist them. Resistance has ended. The process continues quietly. Rest deepens without recognition. The transition carries itself forward. Nothing interferes. Nothing needs to be added. Everything necessary has already faded. Awareness now arrives only briefly. It does not remain. It touches experience lightly, then releases it. There is no effort to stay present. Presence is no longer necessary. The mind has stopped holding attention in place. Attention floats without anchor. Thoughts almost never complete themselves. They fade as soon as they begin. They carry no meaning. They do not invite response. The mind does not attempt to understand them. Understanding requires structure. Structure has already dissolved. Long intervals appear between impressions. These intervals feel smooth and uninterrupted. There is no sense of waiting, no sense of time passing. The body remains quiet and steady. Breathing continues without awareness. Muscles stay relaxed without adjustment. The nervous system remains settled. Nothing calls for alertness. Nothing requests attention. The sense of self softens further. There is little distinction between being and resting. Identity does not form clearly. It is no longer referenced. There is no internal location, no sense of orientation. Awareness does not know where it is. Knowing would require effort. Effort is no longer available. Listening fades in and out gently. Sometimes it disappears completely. Sometimes it returns faintly. These changes occur without importance. They require no interpretation. The mind does not observe them. Observation has ended. The remaining awareness is thin and neutral. It does not move toward anything. It does not move away from anything. It simply fades further. The process continues quietly. Rest deepens without recognition. Nothing interrupts the transition. Nothing remains to be done. The mind has already let go. Awareness now feels almost absent. It no longer announces itself. It appears quietly, then fades without trace. There is no effort to remain aware. Effort has fully dissolved. Attention no longer settles anywhere. It does not rest on sound. It does not rest on thought. It drifts freely without direction. Thoughts rarely form. When they do, they are incomplete. They dissolve before becoming clear. There is no attempt to follow them. Following would require intention. Intention is no longer present. Long stretches pass without mental activity. These stretches feel calm and uninterrupted. There is no sense of duration. Time does not move forward here. It does not move backward either. It simply loses relevance. The body remains deeply settled. Breathing continues quietly and evenly. Muscles stay relaxed without awareness. The nervous system remains balanced. Nothing signals the need to wake. Nothing signals the need to adjust. The sense of self continues to soften. There is little distinction between presence and absence. Identity does not organize itself. It remains diffuse. There is no internal point of reference, no position to return to. Awareness does not locate itself. Location requires structure. Structure has faded completely. Listening may stop entirely, then return faintly, then disappear again. These shifts carry no meaning. They do not require attention. The mind does not respond to them. Response has ended. Rest continues without awareness. The transition deepens quietly. Nothing interferes. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind no longer participates. The process moves forward on its own. Silence carries what remains. Awareness now feels nearly transparent. It no longer holds any shape. It does not gather around experience. It allows everything to pass without contact. There is no sense of observing. Observation would require distance. Distance no longer exists. Attention does not move. It simply thins. Thoughts appear only as faint impressions. They do not form content. They dissolve before becoming ideas. There is no effort to notice them. Noticing would require intention. Intention has already dissolved. Long intervals pass without mental movement. These intervals feel smooth and uninterrupted. There is no awareness of time passing. Time has no position here. The body remains deeply quiet. Breathing continues evenly and softly. Muscles hold no residual tension. Signals remain minimal. The nervous system stays settled. Nothing signals alertness. Nothing signals change. The sense of self fades further. Identity no longer organizes experience. There is no internal reference point, no sense of location, no sense of direction. Awareness does not orient itself. Orientation requires structure. Structure has completely faded. Listening may no longer occur. Sound blends seamlessly with silence. Neither stands out. Neither requires response. The mind does not react. Reaction belongs to wakefulness. Wakefulness has softened beyond reach. The remaining awareness feels neutral. It does not move toward rest. It does not resist it. Rest unfolds on its own. The process requires nothing. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing remains to be adjusted. The transition continues quietly, almost unnoticed, almost complete. Awareness now no longer feels separate from rest. It does not stand apart from experience. It blends into what remains. There is no sense of watching. Watching requires distance. Distance has disappeared. Attention no longer shifts. It does not arrive or leave. It simply thins until it is barely there. Thoughts do not complete themselves. They arise as faint traces and dissolve without form. There is no impulse to recognize them. Recognition would require effort. Effort is no longer present. Long stretches pass without mental activity. These stretches feel smooth and uninterrupted. There is no awareness of duration. Time has no edges here. The body remains fully settled. Breathing continues quietly and evenly. Muscles remain loose without adjustment. The nervous system holds balance effortlessly. Nothing calls attention back. Nothing signals the need to respond. The sense of self continues to soften. Identity does not organize itself anymore. There is no internal position, no orientation, no reference point. Awareness does not locate itself. Location would require structure. Structure has fully dissolved. Listening may be absent for long periods. Sound merges seamlessly with silence. Neither stands out. Neither matters. The mind no longer reacts. Reaction belongs to wakefulness. Wakefulness has already faded. The remaining awareness feels neutral and thin. It does not resist rest. It does not move toward it. Rest unfolds naturally, without effort, without signal, without notice. The transition continues quietly, almost complete. Nothing remains to be done. Awareness now feels almost formless. It does not gather or disperse. It simply remains thin and quiet. There is no sense of attending. Attention no longer functions as a focus. It does not move toward sound. It does not move toward thought. It rests without position. Thoughts no longer form clearly. When impressions arise, they are vague. They fade before becoming defined. There is no attempt to recognize them. Recognition would require effort. Effort has already dissolved. Extended intervals pass without mental activity. These intervals feel smooth and uninterrupted. There is no awareness of time passing. Time no longer organizes experience. The body remains deeply settled. Breathing continues softly and evenly. Muscles stay loose without adjustment. Signals between systems are minimal The nervous system remains balanced. Nothing calls for alertness. Nothing requests response. The sense of self continues to soften. Identity no longer separates itself from rest. There is no internal location, no orientation, no reference point. Awareness does not locate itself. Location requires structure. Structure has fully faded. Listening may disappear for long stretches. Sound blends completely with silence. Neither is distinct. Neither draws attention. The mind does not react. Reaction belongs to wakefulness. Wakefulness has already softened beyond return. The remaining awareness feels neutral. It does not move. It does not resist. It does not anticipate. Rest unfolds on its own, without signal, without boundary, without notice. The transition continues quietly, almost imperceptible, nearly complete. Awareness now feels almost completely absent. It does not return to experience regularly. It appears briefly, then disappears again. There is no effort to remain aware. Effort has no place here. Attention no longer gathers. It no longer drifts either. It simply thins until it is barely present. Thoughts rarely arise. When they do, they lack form. They dissolve before becoming recognizable. There is no attempt to follow them. Following would require intention. Intention is fully dissolved. Long spans pass without any mental movement. These spans feel smooth and uninterrupted. There is no sense of waiting. There is no sense of duration. Time has lost all structure. The body remains fully settled. Breathing continues quietly and evenly. Muscles remain completely relaxed. The nervous system holds balance effortlessly. Nothing signals alertness. Nothing signals change. The sense of self has nearly dissolved. There is little distinction between awareness and rest. Identity no longer organizes experience. There is no internal reference point, no position to return to. Awareness does not locate itself. Location requires structure. Structure has disappeared. Listening may no longer occur at all. Sound merges fully with silence. Neither stands out. Neither matters. The mind does not respond. Response belongs to wakefulness. Wakefulness has already faded. The remaining awareness is extremely thin, almost transparent, almost gone. Rest does not announce itself. It arrives without signal, without confirmation, without notice. The process completes quietly. Nothing remains to be observed. Nothing remains to be held. The transition settles into stillness. Awareness no longer returns. It does not hover at the edge of experience. It does not check or observe. It simply releases itself. There is no sense of presence remaining. Presence has dissolved into rest. Attention does not move. It does not drift. It is no longer active. Thought no longer forms. There are no impressions to register, no fragments to dissolve. Mental activity has faded completely. The mind is no longer organizing anything. There is no structure left to maintain. There is no effort anywhere. Effort has vanished entirely. The body remains quiet and still. Breathing continues on its own. There is no awareness of it. Muscles rest without sensation. The nervous system remains settled. Nothing signals alertness. Nothing signals change. There is no sense of time, no sense of duration, no sense of sequence. Time no longer exists in awareness. There is no sense of self remaining. Identity has fully soft. There is no boundary between awareness and rest. There is only rest. Sound no longer stands apart from silence. Silence no longer has contrast. Nothing draws attention. Nothing requires response. There is no monitoring, no observation, no intention, no return to wakefulness. Rest completes itself naturally, without notice, without signal, without effort. The transition has finished. Nothing remains to be experienced. Nothing remains to be held. Everything has settled. Silence continues. There is no effort anywhere now. Awareness does not return to check itself. It does not hover at the edges. It does not search for experience. There is only quiet continuation. No center, no movement, no point of attention. Thought does not appear. If impressions arise, they dissolve instantly. They leave no trace. Nothing lingers. Nothing repeats. The mind no longer maintains structure. Structure has no function here. There is no sequence unfolding. No before. No after. Only stillness without position. Time has no meaning. Duration is irrelevant. The body remains at rest. Breathing continues naturally. It does not register in awareness. Muscles remain relaxed without sensation. The nervous system stays settled. There are no signals, no requests, no alerts. The sense of self does not return. Identity does not reform. There is no reference point, no orientation, no location. Awareness does not locate itself. It has fully released that function. Sound blends completely into silence. Silence has no contrast. Nothing stands out. Nothing recedes. There is no listening now, no observing, no monitoring. Rest exists on its own, without confirmation, without awareness of itself. The process does not move forward. It does not need to. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. Everything is already softened. Everything is already settled. Quiet continues without notice. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to return. Stillness remains, uninterrupted, complete. There is no movement left to follow. Awareness does not return to itself. It does not check for presence. It does not hover nearby. There is only stillness without boundary. No center. No direction. No distinction. Thought does not arise. If anything appears, it fades immediately. Nothing completes itself. Nothing needs to. The mind no longer maintains continuity. Continuity has no purpose here. There is no sequence unfolding, no transition to observe, no state to enter. Rest has already arrived. Time has no structure. It does not pass. It does not pause. It is irrelevant. The body remains deeply at ease. Breathing continues quietly. There is no awareness of it. Sensation does not register. Signals are absent. The nervous system remains balanced. Nothing calls attention forward. Nothing calls it back. The sense of self does not return. There is no reference point, no orientation, no location. Awareness does not know where it is. Knowing is unnecessary. Silence does not contrast with sound. Sound does not interrupt silence. Nothing stands out. Nothing recedes. There is no listening now, no observing, no noticing. Rest exists without awareness of rest. It does not need confirmation. It does not require duration. Nothing completes. Nothing ends. Stillness continues, without effort, without awareness, without boundary. Everything is already settled. Nothing remains to release. Nothing remains to return. Quiet remains, unbroken, unnoticed, complete.